So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. More Chinese seem to be falling in love with Samgyetang, or Korean ginseng chicken soup. And not to miss this opportunity, Seoul is set to export this dish to its neighboring market within the first half of this year. So the opposition bloc grabbed a surprise victory in yesterday's general elections. What does the outcome mean for the country's economic policies then? We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. Yesterday's parliamentary election results came as a surprise to many. The ruling party lost its majority in the National Assembly, giving away the lead to the opposition for the first time in 16 years. And with the emergence of a splinter opposition group, a multi-party system has returned to the political landscape after long being shaped by a dominant two-party dynamic. And now the question is whether the government will be able to push forward with its desired economic reforms to jumpstart the country's sluggish economy. Our Hwang Jae starts us off.
With the general election that was dominated by concerns about the state of Korea's economy now over, the focus is on how the results will affect economic affairs. As Saenuri Party's defeat signals a bumpy road ahead for both the government and the ruling party, pundits say Saenuri's controversial campaign pledge to start quantitative easing will likely lose steam. The governing party had proposed the central bank buy bonds from state-run banks and purchase mortgage-backed securities, but its loss in the polls means a slimmer chance of winning parliamentary approval, which is a must to move forward.
Under the current law, the Bank of Korea can purchase or sell only government bonds. So to buy corporate bonds or other debt, legal amendments would be required.
The economic democratization pledges made by the Minju Party of Korea, on the other hand, will now be thrown into the spotlight. The Liberal Party has vowed to inject roughly $130 billion into welfare programs by raising corporate taxes. Regardless of the election results, the government says it will remain focused on its economic policy initiatives, which have been virtually dormant for some time due to the election. It will lay out fresh measures to help create more jobs for young people and women later this month. Still, its efforts to get key economic bills on labor reforms and the service sector through the National Assembly will likely be hampered as the Saenuri Party has let its parliamentary majority slip through its fingers. Hwang Jae, Business Daily.
And business groups are sending their well wishes for the 20th National Assembly and pressing newly elected lawmakers to work together toward the goal of reviving the economy. Korea's largest business group, the Federation of Korean Industries, called on political parties to humbly accept the people's decision and rise above party lines for win-win governance. The Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry asked for a system under which both companies and people can thrive in freedom and creative spirit. This as Korea International Trade Association asked for a leap toward an era of $2 trillion trade and per capita income of $40,000. Wednesday's parliamentary elections handed 123 seats of the 300-member parliament to the opposition Minju Party of Korea, while the ruling Saenuri Party took one seat less. And to tell us more about where the country's economic policies are headed, we have Professor Kim Se-won from Ewha Women's University joining us in the studio today. So good to see you, Professor.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so with the emergence of the main opposition Minju Party and the center-left People's Party, we're wondering at this point what way the ruling Saenuri Party is going to take with handling its economic policies.
Well, the result of the election enforces both of the government and Saenuri Party to more talk and compromise with to opposition parties.
And before the elections, though, a group of ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers strongly called on the Bank of Korea to implement quantitative easing measures. I know we talked about this earlier this week, but can you give us a recap of what kind of QE measures they were talking about here?
Well, Korean quantitative easing is providing more money to economy by fully utilizing Bank of Korea's exclusive power to supplying the money to the economy. Usually, Bank of Korea purchases government's bonds from the market to increase the money supply. But this time, Saenuri Party wanted Bank of Korea to purchase Korea Development Bank's bonds and mortgage-backed bonds, which is kind of unusual. And for that purpose, they need to revise Bank of Korea's open market operation related regulations.
Right, and they were expected to, or they're planning to submit a bill regarding that in the new assembly. But now, having lost this majority in Parliament, where do you think this is headed, this QE initiative by the ruling Saenuri Party?
Well, in addition to opposition parties' oppositions on Korean quantitative easing, I don't think there was a broad agreements between quantitative easing between Korean governments and Bank of Korea and Saenuri Party. And in addition, the Minju Party, for example, the opposition party prefers expansionary fiscal policy rather than expansionary monetary policy.
All right.
So it will be very difficult to implement quantitative easing in the near future.
A tough road ahead indeed. What about the ruling party's economic policy plans that center around, I guess, deregulating future growth industries as well as investing in them?
Well, Saenuri Party before election talked about the more aggressive fiscal policy by spending more money on renovations in SOCs and some promising industries like ITs and biotechs. But the opposition parties, for example, the Minju Party pretty much agrees on expansionary fiscal policy, but they are different in the way of spending of the governments. They want to spend more on welfare-related policies and permanent apartments providings.
More so than new future growth
Exactly.
engines. All right, then, at this point, we're wondering, what are some of the major economic pledges that have been put out by the opposition bloc ahead of the elections? And now that they have the majority in parliament, where do you think this is headed?
Well, the theme of economic policy between two opposition parties are almost the same. They believe that there is a prerequisite before economic growth, which is democratization of the economic policies, like something like fair income distributions. So they will be trying to increase tax for high-income earners and corporate taxes, and they want to spend more money on welfare-related programs.
Now, putting pledges into practice is a totally different game here, though. So how realistic do you think their pledges are? Do you think they'll be able to carry out these pledges?
Well, I think the opposition parties know that without the support of the ruling parties or governments, they can implement their policies. So there will be, in the end, something compromise between governments and the opposition parties.
All right. Well, President Park and our government have also been pushing to pass this pending economic and labor reform bills, which has been sitting at the National Assembly for quite a while now. Now, why are some of the bills stuck there for such a long time?
Well, there have been something serious conflicts on these two acts, actually, the Service Industry Development Act and the Labor Market Reforming Acts, and Park Geun-hye's government believe that this is something fundamental in reviving Korean economy. But on the other side, the opposition parties believe that these two acts really hurts the fundamentals of our economy, like the public health insurance system. And it will make employers easy to lay off their workers. But that will shake the fundamentals of the job securities.
Then what's ahead for these bills? Would it have a harder time now, now after sitting there for years?
Well, even though the opposition parties became the majority in Congress, as time goes by, and particularly when recession goes on, they feel more responsibility on the effects of the government policies. But after that, they will try to accept part of the President Park's new two acts in renovating labor market and service markets.
All right. Well, we'll definitely keep a close eye on where these bills will end up, I guess, and how well these parties will carry out their pledges from here on out.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today, Professor.
Thank you very much.
The average number of years an employee stays at a company once they get hired is 12 years. This is according to job search portal's Haramin after it analyzed the business reports from 80 firms out of Korea's top 100 in terms of sales. Employees at SK Energy work the longest at an average of 21 years, followed by petrochemical firm Yeocheon NCC with nearly 20 and Kia Motors at over 19 years. Over 70% of all firms evaluated had an average employment record that surpassed a decade. Another thing to note here was that men generally worked for longer time periods at one company compared to their women counterparts. Samsung Display has once again maintained its top position in the 9-inch and smaller display market last year. According to market research firm IHS, Samsung accounted for about 23% of total revenue last year, followed by Japan Display at 16% and LG Display at 13%. IHS attributed Samsung's lead to its unparalleled technology in manufacturing high-resolution smartphone AMOLED displays, which saw a 54% growth in unit shipments on year. The market research firm added that firms like Japan Display and Sharp have announced that they will switch over to produce AMOLED displays by 2018 to compete in the already saturated small and medium display market. Along with lip-smacking fried chicken and beer, Korea's very own Samgyetang, or ginseng chicken soup, has emerged as a new craze among Chinese tourists. And the good news for them and Korea is that soon they'll be able to get their hands on the dish in their home kitchens. Our Lee Joo-young has more.
Steaming hot and rich in flavor. With a small chicken stuffed with glutinous rice, ginseng, garlic, and jujube, Korea's ginseng chicken soup, or Samgyetang, is highly popular among Chinese tourists. If before they had to come to Korea for the ginseng-infused soup, soon that'll no longer be the case, as ready-to-eat Samgyetang exports to the world's second biggest economy are set to kick off within the first half of this year. According to Seoul's Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, the core procedure for registering 11 Samgyetang plants with the Chinese government was completed during a 3-day trip Korea's food minister took to Beijing, an achievement that has been 10 years in the making. With this, the ministry said Samgyetang shipments to the neighboring country this year are estimated to reach 500 tons, worth roughly $3 million. The figure is set to rise to $10 million annually down the line. The ministry added the new gateway will not only help alleviate the severe oversupply of 12 million chickens in the country, but also increase agricultural and food exports to the Middle Kingdom by its targeted 32% this year to $1.4 billion.
It will open up a huge export market at a time when the Japanese market is shrinking, while becoming a door of entry for other exports like eggs, milk, and livestock products.
Just a few steps now remain until the first batch is shipped out, and experts underline the importance of precluding any potential outbreaks of bird-induced viral infections like the avian flu, which occur relatively frequently in Korea. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
People are borrowing more to make bets on Korea's equity markets amid pervading bullish sentiment. Outstanding margin loans have crossed the 7 trillion won mark again, and the borrowing binge is sparking concern. Our Eunice Kim has the story.
People wait their turn at a brokerage consultation booth. At a time when interest rates are staying at historic lows, individual investors are running out of ways to grow their money.
Interest rates are seemingly lower than inflation, so it's important to invest my cash somewhere.
Many are turning to stocks amid optimism that Korea's largest companies will present positive results in the first quarter.
I have friends who are so ambitious they take out loans to make a buck on equities.
In fact, outstanding margin loans have peaked in recent weeks from a low clocked in mid-February. As of last Friday, the balance rung up at 7.05 trillion won, crossing the 7 trillion won mark for the first time in 7 months. And where did that money go? Just under half went to the main bourse, the Kospi holding some $2.8 billion in borrowed money, while the rest went to the tech-heavy Kosdaq at $3.2 billion.
Margin trading has a benefit of raising profits 2 to 3 times when lucky, but that means you can lose just as much.
This is because securities companies lending the money are able to sell the stock without regard to the borrower's wishes if their value fall below a predetermined level, known as the dreaded margin call. This is meant to minimize their losses, but it could also lead to more accounts empty of both money and stocks. The balance of margin loans between February 19 and last Friday surged more than 12%, while the Kospi eked out a rise of just under 3%. Analysts warn should outstanding margin loans continue to expand when equity values do not, it could prove to be a burden too heavy to bear for Korea's small investors and stock markets. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.